From BQE Restaurant and Lounge in the heart of Atlanta's historic Martin Luther King District, it's Newsmakers Live, bringing you the issues, politics, and perspective of the Atlanta community. Now in its 10th season, here is tonight's moderator and your host, 8-time Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, Mr. Maynard Eaton.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. Listen, I don't know about you, but this, as a political journalist, I love nights like tonight. The night before an election, it's kind of almost like going to bed with a sweetheart or something. It's exciting, but it's also important. This may well be the most important and pivotal race in the last 40 years in Atlanta. And I have some sharpshooters, some real heavyweights up here to talk about politics in Atlanta tonight and tomorrow, and what portends tomorrow, and what it will mean for that. To my right is probably the best young political thinker in town right now. His name is Rashad Ritchie. You hear him every day on syndicated radio. He's now the new CBS Channel 46 political commentator and editor. They stole him from here, and now they put. To his right is a brilliant lady named Pat Poulard. Pat is she's Miss Politics in Clayton County. She's on the Board of Elections in Clayton County. She's a political consultant, and she's the chair of the Clayton County Democratic Party. Pat, thanks for joining us. To her right is my friend, the savviest conservative that I know, sharp-tongued, quick-witted, makes sense, even if you disagree with him. His name is Shelley Winter. And a new component to our first-time guest here, Mr. Rodney Mullins. He's a former Obama appointee, a Mr. Politics himself. Lady and gents, welcome. Rashad, I'm going to start with you since you get paid to talk about this. What does tomorrow portend? A lot of people are weighing in. A lot of people are saying Mary Norwood can win this thing. Polls say she's 6 points ahead. Cory Booker here yesterday, Senator Cory Booker says, no, that's not going to happen. What do you say?
So let me first of all say this. We've been here before, and I refuse to fall out with black people because they vote for Mary Norwood. Let me say that for the record. I love you too much to fall out with you. But I get it. I definitely get it. So when you calculate, and I looked at the numbers on Friday, this is a very specific answer to your question, okay? I saw places overperforming and underperforming. The places that are overperforming for an early election, remember, the vote total is higher for early voting this go-round than it was during the general election.
Sure.
So now you need to look at what's overperforming. Areas that have a natural constituency base connected to Mary Norwood are overperforming. This election will come down to how the get out the vote apparatus is on election day. It is just that close. I do not think it's a 6-point difference. I think it's a 1 or 2 point difference at the most. I think this will be a very close race, and we'll see what happens. I know the Keisha Lance Bottoms campaign, they purchased a whole lot of black radio advertising. And the way you overcome voter apathy is repetition. I know some people say, I'm tired of hearing these commercials. Well, get over it because it works. Okay? So repetition will be the name of the game on Election Day.
Pat, you know politics. You've been here before, worked with Cynthia McKinney, a major political player back in the day. You're also a female. This is about women.
And because black women are the biggest voter bloc, and you have to understand that they know what's on the ballot. It's not so much the candidates, but affordable housing is on the ballot. Safety in our streets is on the ballot. Partnerships to make our schools better is on the ballot. Creating jobs, quality jobs for our community is on the ballot. So we've got to understand that there are critical issues that are on the ballot, and which one of those candidates will be able to address those issues that are important to them.
Do black women care that color is on the ballot?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. When you think about Atlanta being the gateway of the South, you want to picture who's going to be at that gate. So you also think about who better is going to represent Shaquan and Quantavious, because they don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat. They just know that what are you going to do for them? When you think about the person that's going to be able to appoint a police chief, that's important. That's important to young people especially. So we've got to always understand that it's going to be about turnout, like Rashad said. It's grab and drag time. You're going to actually have to grab and drag people from Walmart, from MARTA Station, from everywhere. And quite frankly, both campaigns do very well with turnout. But I would say that because of the machine that Keisha Lance Bottoms has from the previous elections, they know the street game.
Right. Shelley, there are those who suggest that Shirley Franklin's endorsement of Mary Norwood was a coup de grace, that it was a turning point in the race. Is that a difference, or is that just much ballyhoo about nothing?
To Pat's point, I think it was important because she is a black woman and a former mayor, and well respected by other black women. I think to the point that was made earlier, when you talked about the issues on the ballot, I'm going to say this: affordable housing, jobs, crime reduction, or safety, public safety is what you said. I would make the argument that all those things Mary Norwood has been at the forefront of. She has fought for all those things. It's not like this woman came out of the blue and said, I want to be mayor. And when you talk about black female voters are the number one constituency, what a lot of people just say black female voters. What they don't look at is primarily vast majority of those voters are 40 plus. And in that 40 plus, a large majority of those people are super voters, which are seniors. When I talk to older women or seniors or elders, you will hear them talk about Mary Norwood like she is the best thing since sliced bread. And the reason why they're saying that is they haven't sold out. I would dare anybody to call a 60-plus-year-old black woman in Atlanta out her name. What she has seen is that when she had a street light out and she called City Hall, Mary Norwood showed up. So I think what you're seeing now, what you're going to see tomorrow, my prediction is that it is going to be a close race, but my prediction is that Mary Norwood wins by about 4 points. That's my prediction. And I think the 4 points will come primarily from those super voters and those seniors.
Rodney, if that's the case, does that change the whole perception of Atlanta? You work for Obama. You work for first black president. Are we witnessing perhaps our last black mayor in a while?
I believe that if you do an analysis and you look at the voting digest, how it's shifting, the voting digest and the voting population in many urban centers across the United States is shifting because of traffic, because of a desire to be in close proximity to working centers. So the urban location is more desirable than it was 20 to 25 years ago. So what we've noticed in the population shifts, and if you look at it locally, the annexation of Emory will be key. I think we've done little analysis on how that will impact voting. We also need to look at the analysis of what happened when we destroyed some of the housing projects, okay? Because what has happened is that we dislocated people that were of a particular ethnicity, of a particular race. We did not replace them with an equivalent ethnicity. So that was a voting digest. That's right. We did, but it was not the same. So we have to take that into account. So there are a number of things happening. With the price of the real estate that is going up, that's going to attract a certain type of ethnicity, a certain type of demographic. So what we've done is unknowingly or unintentionally, we've shaded, it's intentional. So that's right. So we have reshaped and remorphed the voting digest of Metro Atlanta. And I will predict, if the trend continues, unless something monumental happens, right now it's about 52-48. I predict it will shift probably 8 to 9% within the next 2 to 3 years. Because if you look at the number of cranes going up in Midtown and the cranes going up in Buckhead. So I think that basically what it portends is that we will have a new population in Metro Atlanta because we're not aggressively redeveloping or engaging in gentrification mitigation activities in West and Southwest Atlanta. So that's my response to you.
Interesting. Now, you talk about cranes going up. My wife and I were at a marvelous home in Morningside.
Right.
Rita Williams' son and daughter-in-law lived there. And it's a beautiful home. Cory Booker was there along with the mayor. A black family in the heart of, had to be $1 million plus home. Are we seeing young millennials or just older millennials, will they be a major factor, the 40-plus professionals who got a little money in their pocket?
Yeah, they will absolutely be a major factor in the election.
Your age group.
Well, I'm 36, so I'm a little younger than that. So, you know, don't put 4 years on me, man. So,
talking about the money.
Right, there you go. So let me tell you what's really interesting about this election. This is unfortunate, an unfortunate truth about this current mayoral race. It is not about what it should be about.
No, right. Absolutely.
You're not hearing commercials. You're not hearing commercials of their policy differences. You're not hearing commercials, even though they share a legislative history, both being members of city council. You're not hearing radio ads, television ads, social media memes, or social media ads telling you how they are distinguishable by way of voting history. What you're hearing are 3 R's. You cannot avoid these 3 R's. Read, race, and the word Republican. That is what this election has come down to. Let's play no games. Reid overplayed his hand when he went after a lot of these opponents of his endorsed candidate in a personal manner. That is why they cannot see themselves supporting Keisha Lance Bottoms.
And that's why he's been so uncharacteristically quiet.
Yeah, they figured out how to keep him quiet in these last 2 weeks. It's a day late, a dollar short. The damage has been done. Keisha Lance Bottoms came on V103. I interviewed her there. She came on WAOK. I interviewed her there. I asked her this question. I said, listen, here's what the streets are saying. The streets are saying that you are an extension of Kasim Reed's administration.
Virtually a puppet.
Right. She had a great answer for it, appropriate, to the point, authentic, and believable. Her answer was, he wasn't there when I became a judge at 32. He wasn't there when I graduated from law school, top of the class. It is sexist. This was her wording. It is sexist to think that Mayor Reid has to hold my hand as a leader for Atlanta. Nobody said that he would have been an extension of Shirley Franklin. That was a good answer. But she should have said that, in my opinion, she should have said that the day after he endorsed her.
Can I jump in? When myself, Dr. Joyce Wilson, and Killer Mike Render moderated the Loudermilk debate earlier in October, that same question was asked of her by Dr. Joyce Wilson, and she gave the exact same answer. And my response to that was, you can't, it boggles the mind to me that I live in a world where a woman will accept the endorsement. Not the endorsement. John Eves or Shirley Franklin endorsed Mary Norwood. You will accept the powerful machine in hiring. Every single person on her staff, with the exception of Tracy, most come from the Obama administration. Her pollsters from the Obama administration. These are powerful political people working on a mayor of Atlanta campaign. That came from Kasim. When you talk about fundraising, the money you've raised came from Kasim. You can't ride the back of a brother throughout an entire general election and then tell me it's sexist for me to tie you to that same brother. That's a ridiculous premise. And so my point, what I said back to her, is it's the same thing I just said. And her answer was a canned answer, the same as it is there. My point is this, and I think she's a wonderful, beautiful, articulate, smart, everything. A sister, if you win, God bless you, I think you'll do a good job. My point is, stop playing my people. That's what I keep saying. Stop playing. This brother just articulated what happened in the last 40 years. And he said nicely, because he knows the truth, he said nicely, inadvertently, It wasn't inadvertently when you brought down the projects.
That was on purpose.
It wasn't inadvertently when you moved people out of their homes. It wasn't inadvertently when in Pittsburgh neighborhood you threatened people with eminent domain to build a park. That wasn't inadvertent. You did that on purpose. And now you come around with 2 days left in the election. You bring out Kamala Harris, great woman, Cory Booker, great people. These are not progressives. These are dyed-in-the-wool blue dog Democrats who are pro-Wall Street and have done nothing for the people in their communities. Throughout there, she's just there. She can't give her a grade. Cory Booker is pro-Wall Street all the way.
Cory Booker
He's raised money.
He was a pretty good mayor now.
Cory Booker has raised money with Ivanka and Jared Kushner. They're all dear friends. My point is this. You're coming along now. They just did a progressive agenda that they just signed on a news thing. You had your progressive candidate. He came in 7th place, Vincent Fort. This man is so principled that he wouldn't endorse nobody. You know, and that tells me everything I need to know about Bottom's campaign. Because you couldn't get Vincent Fort. Vincent Fort is the blackest man in Atlanta.
But he got Killer Mike.
No, but I'm saying
he got Killer Mike.
He got Killer Mike. Killer Mike is a progressive supporting the black sister for the reasons of business and all of that. What I'm saying to you is that
for business, like most of them
no. Vincent Fort is. I'm talking about politicals. Killer Mike is an endorser. I'm talking about politicals. Vincent Fort is the blackest candidate in politics in Atlanta, and he refused to endorse her.
Shelley. Okay, I get your point, but it's his point, and he has a right to that conservative point, and he has a right. Well, you still took away from a black sister that she, in her own right, may be the person to lead this city. Both of them have what it takes to run this city. However, you are attaching so much to her because of Kasim Reed. Is your problem with Kasim Reed, or is it with Keisha Lance Bottoms? We can't afford, in this day and age.
Kasim said yesterday the reason they're doing that is because they couldn't beat him before. Well, they're trying to put him on. He said my name is not on the ballot.
But his name is on the ballot because of the fact of how he inserted himself in the race. I'm not going to take that and say that didn't happen, because it did happen. And I think that he was wrong for doing that. But because it put her on a weak footing. She didn't have the foundation. And she catapulted herself to the top because of his assistance. Right, his assistance and endorsement. Now it's become a wrench around her neck. So what we have to think about is what's on the ballot. You said Reed, race, and Republican. We have to think about the long-term picture when we're thinking about this race, too. We can't just think about these two candidates. We have to think about whether or not this state is going to progress the way it needs to progress and not stay in the stagnant state it is in terms of transportation, jobs, our schools. Who is going to be the best person to lead us? Now, Mary, she's wonderful in terms of our communities and being there and going to the MPU meetings and all of that. She's been entrenched. But is she the visionary? Is Keisha the visionary? You got to ask yourself the question on whether or not this person can actually lead you into the 21st century.
Let me. Somebody mentioned Keith Gamage mentioned to me driving down. He said, "Mayor, who do you think has the cachet, the personality, persona to lead this? Who looks like the mayor of Atlanta?" Got to give it to Keisha in that regard.
You know, that's really interesting. This election has become about everything but policy. Who looks the best? Who becomes who becomes the fitting image of an Atlanta mayor. And let me push back on something Shelley said. So Vincent came in 5th, not 7th. And he ran a remarkable insurgency campaign. He was running an insurgency campaign. He was able to get people to talk about issues more so than others. But when you quantify a black woman like Keisha Lance Bottoms to basically say, well, she's bringing in national money, she's not authentically connecting to the community, and you put the blame of 40 years of leadership, good and bad, on the back of this one woman, right. And you say that this is failed. Hold on. You say this is failed leadership. All right. So and let me make this point. Let me make this point because Mary Norwood has been there longer than Keisha Lance Bottoms, and it's just amazing to me how she gets to avoid all of the stench of corruption at City Hall, but Keisha Lance Bottoms gets the blunt of it. I don't get that. I don't understand that.
I'll tell you why. Want me to explain?
Sure.
Okay. Here's why.
Briefly.
Again, it goes back to who you tied yourself to. It's every endorsement.
Kasim Reed hasn't been indicted.
There's no.
Is that who?
Two people. The feds walked. The feds walked into their office.
They sure did. They walked into City Hall. Hold on, wait a minute. They walked into City Hall's office. If you're going to connect somebody, if you're going to connect somebody, make sure you connect City Hall to corruption.
So then, how do we connect all of these people to the current president?
I'm just saying.
How do we connect all these people?
Why
to the
are you
current
connecting
president?
corruption?
Let me say this.
Moving on.
I want to answer what his question is. The reason why you do that is. The reason why you endorse somebody, you're tied to the endorsement. I hear people saying there's an ad. Jeff Dickerson said it on Georgia Gang, and there's an ad running on social media that says what Shirley said about Mary 8 years ago during the election. There's another ad running on social media talking about what Kathy Woolard said about Mary during this election.
Right.
They're tied to the endorsement. So if you're going to tie them to those endorsements, I can tie you and Keisha. I can tie Keisha to Kasim's endorsement and Kasim's legacy.
I'm good with them being tied to the endorsement.
I didn't tie 40 years of moving poor people out to Kasim.
The question is simple. The question is simple.
I tied it to 40 years
Why
of
is
leadership.
it? Listen, this is for everybody up in here. Why is it that when we talk about corruption in Atlanta, there's a black face on that corruption in our mind? In our conversation, when the truth is you got white folks at City Hall that are elected, you got white folks at City Hall that are executive managers.
Right.
But you're about losing black leadership and black power. How can you possibly say that?
First of all, sir, I'm not scared of losing a damn thing because I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. I'm going to wake up Wednesday morning.
That's a
right.
You know
okay.
What I mean by you can't. You understand what I'm saying? The common thing in this race is about African Americans and us losing power in the city of Atlanta. When you talk about corruption in the city of Atlanta, it's tied to the same power structure you're afraid of losing. You can't say, why do you see all black faces when you see corruption?
But that's if you believe.
Reason why you saying.
All right, I got you. But that's if you believe the corruption is systemic or not.
Rodney.
It's corrupt as a painful place system.
And it is well.
That's not black or white. That's not Republican or Democrat. That's politics.
Yeah, Shelley.
$2,500 a run for office.
Right,
Shelley, that goes across the gamut. So why are you connecting? Okay, that's across the gamut.
About the city of Atlanta. We're not talking about the gamut. We're talking about right here.
Sir.
Man, you can't
Shelley, wait a minute. All right, I'm getting frustrated up here. So let me make this point very plain to you. Who's paying? Hold on, wait a minute. Let me say this. Hold on. Who's paying the politicians? No, not everybody. That's a lie. Who's paying? Who are the developers paying the politicians on both sides of the political spectrum?
Everybody.
Sir.
Everybody.
The developers in the city of Atlanta, are they white for the majority?
Or all out of state.
For the majority of the developers, are they white or black? The ones paying the
probably white.
Okay.
What's the point?
All right. The point is it's across the board.
Most of the airport contractors are black.
Yeah.
The airport contracts. Maynard started that.
And those are the contracts they want to keep. That's the truth. Right. Let's move on to something that we can go back to that. Rodney, what is your thoughts about black preachers? They were once the point. Black preachers really called the shots. They made an election. They called who the black candidate would be. They pretty much endorsed, many of them have endorsed Keisha. Will that work? Will that make a difference, you think? Do black preachers still have a key to an election door?
No.
What you're making me think about is a conversation I had with Juanita Abernathy. And Juanita Abernathy told me one day, she said, Rodney, there was one time when our black preachers would stand up when there was an issue. They were very active. And she told me, she said, I'm very concerned, Rodney, because a lot of our black churches are not as active as they should be. She said, that's why we were powerful. And what that means, what that translates into in the form of political capital, what you don't use, you lose. We have not always exercised our spiritual capital in the political capital realm. So we haven't leveraged it for a return on investment in that arena. And what has happened is that our black preachers have forgotten that political decisions have an impact on their offering, on their church demographics. So as population shifts in West Atlanta, then their entire congregation could change in 5 to 6 years. So what has happened is that we have not had a candidate-proof formula to voting. So what happens is that what we found with the Obama administration is that many urban communities make irrational decisions on rational questions. So what happens is what you said earlier. You said, well, was someone who looks like the better candidate. Well, I don't care if it's Mickey Mouse. What you vote on is based on certain outcomes. So where you protect yourself as a voter, you come up with an agenda. The agenda in this election are 3 E's: education, equity, and economics. And we have missed the ball on that as a population. So that's why we a group of us created a voters contract. A voters contract for equity for both candidates, because if we miss the ball, then we could end up with nothing in this election from either Keisha or Mary if we don't have a very focused agenda that says this is what we want for our vote, and we leverage that.
Paula, both candidates went to church yesterday, all over town. That still doesn't matter much?
It doesn't matter because of the fact that the preachers really don't take the opportunity to educate their voters. Voters don't go out and vote. They don't turn out because they're not educated. And if they're not educated about the candidates and they're not educated about the issues, they're not going. And so they miss that opportunity to educate their membership and let them know what's at stake. And so when the sisters in the church don't know what's at stake, or if it was a federal issue in terms of their Medicaid or their food stamps or their Medicare, they be at the polls. But because they don't know how their vote correlates to their everyday life, they don't go. You got to tell a brother, judges are on that ballot. You gonna go before a judge. So wouldn't you rather have a fair-minded judge, somebody could give you probation rather than jail time? That's what you have to understand, that they don't understand that vote and how it correlates to their everyday life. And so it doesn't matter to Shaquan or Quantavious.
I love those names you keep coming
I used to say Shaniqua, but my daughter said I had to change that. And then the other part of that is we got to really understand that the preacher also is scared of their 501c3. Back when the Bush was in office, scared a lot of the clergy from really making themselves available and making their voters and their members go out and vote and talk about voting and all of that when they started getting threatened about their 501c3. So they stay away from it now.
Rodney, we're going to wind this up. I want each of you to have a final comment on where do you really think we are today? What do you think happens tomorrow? And what do you think it could mean? Each of you talk about that, and we're going to close it out.
All right, so...
No, we'll start that when you come out.
Well, I believe that tomorrow is pivotal, because I believe the way this electorate votes tomorrow will influence the next probably 8 to 10 years. Because as the population shifts, and it's always difficult to beat the incumbent. So once that incumbent gets in place, you have the annexation of Emory, you have the habitation of all the potential apartment units that are going, and rentals and homes that are going up throughout Atlanta. They'll be filled with another 10, 50, 100,000 residents. That's going to impact the electorate. So I believe that Atlanta is shifting. And I believe you never vote for today, you vote for tomorrow, for the next generation. And I believe that as African Americans, sometimes we've often tried to be too neutral. Sometimes you can't be a neutral Negro. You've got to take a stand. And that's why our ministers, our preachers don't always have capital, because they do not have presented themselves as politically savvy. And so you have to earn that reputation to receive those points. So I think that we're shifting tomorrow. I'm very in a flux as to who will win, because I think it's very close. Because I think that we haven't been focused focused on issues. So it's not an intellectual decision. So I think that it's going to, but whatever way it goes, it's going to dictate the next 10 to 15 years, I believe.
Shelley, you are conservative thinking. You've been talking about this race for several months. We're at the end game now. What happens tomorrow?
Like I said, I think Mary wins it by 4. I think that two things are at work. To your point, I think that if you looked at, first of all, let me say this. I'm not one of those, I disagree with the notion that this is the most pivotal election. We had the most pivotal election last year. We had the most pivotal election 8 years ago with Kasim. Every election is the most pivotal and the most groundbreaking, and everything's going to change. If, to his point, to Rodney's point, 8 years ago, if it was the most pivotal election then, we were having the exact same conversation we're having now. Reed, race, Republican.
Right.
The exact same one. Yet 8 years later, everything is heading in the same position that it was headed 8 years ago. Gentrification's going up, income inequality is going up, schools are still bad, safety is still an issue. The same exact issues 8 years ago, we're still talking about this year, 8 years later. So when you talk about 15 years from down the line, I've got to say to myself, is it going to be any different? And is it going to be different because Mary Norwood wins? Is it going to be different because Keisha wins, Ms. Bottoms wins? I can't see either one of them. There's no policy difference between them, except, and this is very important, I'll leave you with this. Atlanta Progressive News is edited by Matthew Cardinal, about 9-10 years now. This is a progressive online newspaper.
Gay newspaper.
Gay, progressive, same thing. But it's progressive.
Not the same thing.
Well, I would say it's log cabin Republicans are the log cabin Republicans. Aside from that, it's gay and progressive. But it's Atlanta Progressive News. He rates the city council members every year. Yes. At the end of the year and in the midterm of the year. He rates the city council members and the mayors based on their progressive stances and votes that they take. Mid-year of this year, he took he did his progressive ratings. Keisha Lance Bottoms came in last place, behind Mary Norwood, behind the Republicans on the city council, behind everyone else. Felicia Moore had the highest score traditionally as a progressive city council member. Natalie Archibong is second all the time. Vincent Ford is the only person who ran for mayor who got a perfect score of 100 based on his stances on progressive issues. So my question becomes to you, if Ms. Bottoms is the real Democrat, what kind of Democrat is she? If she's last in a rating done by progressives for progressive issues. And if Mary Norwood is a Republican, what kind of Republican is she if she's above Ms. Bottoms? And as Rashad did, and many of us had done it way before, but we were called names, he did it brilliantly on the radio station, where he brought up the Democrats and Mary Norwood's voting history makes her a lean Democrat. There's 5 things. There's hard right, moderate, leans, center, or swing, leans Democrat, hard left. There's only 5 choices. This woman leans Democrat. Yet, he said the 3 things are Reed, Republican, and race. So my thing is, I think Mary Norwood wins by 4. I don't think it changes the trajectory of Atlanta, because trajectory of Atlanta has already been going away from the black and the poor. I don't think that changes. I think it just continues the same way it's been going. And I think that at a certain point, we as a people have to put our foot down and say, stop taking advantage of us, and we're going to make you work for this vote. And if I have to vote for this white woman for 4 years to make these other Negroes recognize that my vote counts, then I'll take 4 years.
People saying that. And what are black women saying? That's the most decisive vote, the most important voting bloc, other than gays, perhaps, are black women.
Again, black women are going to be I think black women and millennials are going to be the deciding factor if they turn out. And so it's going to be incumbent upon whoever has that ground game. And if I recall, 8 years ago, there was a fantastic ground game that got that guy 700 more votes than Mary did in 2009.
And a new precinct.
And so I think that this election is going to demonstrate how even this state moves forward. in terms of our gubernatorial race in 2018. And so does that mean that this state stays purple or stays red? I don't know. But it's going to actually be the millennials, black women voters, if they turn out, it's going to be something that Shelley's not going to like. I say this, I think that both women are capable. I think both women would probably have to work harder than a man would ever have to work because they're a woman. And so I think that, and I'm just being honest with you, and a black woman have to work even harder. And so we've got to understand that all of those issues are on the ballot, and it's up to the voter to decide whether or not their hot button issue is going to be addressed. And so when they think about that, and I don't know if it's going to be 4 points. I don't think it's going to be 4 points. I think it's going to be very, very close because tomorrow, Sadie and everybody, they go to vote on election day. So you don't know, and if it's a good day, we're fair weather people. If it's a good day, we're going to turn out. And if it's not a good day, we won't turn out. But it's going to be, and I just took a ride to the SEC game the other day, and I had a Lyft driver, and it was a young lady about 21 years old. And she said she was voting for Keisha Lance Bottoms because she represented something to her that she could look up to. And I felt that was really interesting, And she didn't talk about Maynard or the history or the 40 years. She just talked about this woman being some sort of person that she could look up to and say, I can do that myself. And so there are a lot of issues, and there's a lot of hot button issues that the individual voter will think about when they go to those polls tomorrow. But it's all going to be about the grab and drag experience.
Yes, sir. Do you talk about this every day? What are your final thoughts going to be tonight, tomorrow morning?
My final thoughts are this. It's good to vote. It's good to vote, but you don't have to vote just on election day.
No, right?
So, see, I vote with this every day. See this bill? I vote with this every day. When you have it. If we don't figure out a way to leverage our economic successes to hold elected officials accountable, it doesn't matter if a Keisha Lance Bottoms or Mary Norwood gets elected because you'll still be out in the cold because you're not voting with your dollars. Today I had the great opportunity to interview Maynard Jackson III. Maynard Jackson III, the son of the first black mayor in the city of Atlanta. So during a commercial break, we're doing the regular off-the-record talk, right? And during this commercial break, his wife brought to my attention. She said, Rashad, we've been here before.
She just brought that to me, too.
She brought that to you, too. Yes. And she pointed me to an old article that came out in 1981. And I read this article during the commercial break, Washington Post. And I told my producer, I said, play another song or let me ride out on this bumper music because I need to finish this article. And the article was about Maynard Jackson endorsing Andy Young. No, this was for mayor. Okay, for mayor. This was a runoff election. He goes into a runoff by the skin of his teeth. Maynard Jackson was also called heavy-handed, like Kasim Reed is being called right now.
He was.
Right. Maynard Jackson said, if you're voting for the white opponent of Young, you are a shinning and grinning Negro. He said this on air. Do you know how tough and hard those words were back then? And so automatically white Atlanta labeled Maynard the great shining leader of unity as a racist. But it did not stick. Young gets elected. We move forward with our lives. What has happened since Maynard is that Maynard came in with a specific agenda to advocate for the underserved. He came in with that agenda, almost like a lobbyist. Every leader we've had since him, they have brokered a little more. They have leveraged a little bit over time back to the same folk that Maynard took this city from.
So who becomes the skin and the Negroes at that point?
Right. No, I get the point. No, I get the point.
All right, my bad.
But that's why I bring this to you today. I've been very clear on every social media platform I'm on. I'm not falling out with black folk if they vote for Mary Norwood, because I get it. I understand. I'm not falling out regardless of how you vote, because I love you too much. The election tomorrow is more about style. That's what the campaign ads are about. They're about style. They're about access. Yeah, Mary Norwood gets elected. You may have a different team at City Hall. But do you get access to the team that's there now?
Listen, he talked about Maynard Jackson. I've had the chance of covering Maynard Jackson his second and third terms. I got here when he was running for office. There was nobody like Maynard Jackson. Nobody. And he was about the downtrodden. He did care. He talked about Marvin Arrington like a dog too, like Kasim talked about Caesar Mitchell. But he got away with it. He was Maynard Jackson. But those days are nowhere near like we are now.
Yeah.
Nobody had that kind of cachet, that kind of a giant person. I think, though, that endorsements still have some sway.
Sure.
I really do. I said and wrote, I think Shirley Franklin's endorsement was a coup d'etat. I think that nailed it for Mary. People respect Shirley. Do the black preachers still have some? Sure. There's a Cory Booker and a Mary Reed? Sure. But between Shirley Franklin and gay folks, Kathy Wood, that's what's going to swing this election. It's going to be a great one. It's going to be a nail biter. We thank you for joining us.
Thank you
for being here.
Thank you.
For the last word, the final word in this election season, my partner, my friend, we've been doing this for 10 years. We agree to disagree most of the time, but he's a political thinker. Mr. Jim Welcome.
We'd like to thank you all for coming out to this season. The question of whether Mary Norwood wins this election or not is unimportant. What's happening is the politics of the city of Atlanta is sending a message to black people, especially its black leaders. That message is, you fucked us over enough. That unless you give us access, we will try something else. What you're witnessing in Atlanta is a lesson that's going out, and everybody's sitting here, especially black and African. We're an African-American interest organization. And we're sitting here, and everyone is sitting here wondering, are we going to still be able to walk into City Hall like we do today, tomorrow? Well, the question is, you walk into City Hall, but you get nothing unless you're part of the clique. Mary says, I'm going to be all-inclusive. There'll be just as many people that look like you, that look like me, getting access. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Newsmakers.
All right, yeah.